Alright, I'm making this video on a battery replacement for the iPad Pro 12.9 inch. It is the first generation, model number A1652. The battery is dying after about a minute and a half of play. It'll only charge up to about 28% and then it just stays there. That could be an indication of something else, but I'm thinking because of the age of the device and how much she uses it that it's probably a bad battery. It could be the charge chip making it not get past 28%, but I think that's a little bit less likely. So to rule out battery, we're going to try that first, and I think that'll do it. So I've got my heating pad here set to 75 degrees Celsius. I'm going to start warming up the device. I can tell by touch when it's warm enough. This model, the screen attaches to the device right about here. Flex cables go up, so I have to kind of lift the whole thing up, get some playing cards, and then kind of tilt it this way to be able to get underneath with screwdrivers and unconnect that. But first, after I lift it, I don't go straight for the flex cable to the LCD. I first disconnect the battery. You don't want to take anything off, disconnect anything from the logic board if there's still power running to the device. So, in order to do that, this is a good screen, so I'm not doing a screen repair, which means I need to be very careful and get this up without cracking it. There's a trick to that, a few tricks to that. I like to use playing cards. Older models, they would open like a book. You'd have your flex cable in the corner on the side, like in the airs or something like that. This one's different. It kind of all has to come up straight and then cockeyed, just because of the weird location of the connectors. "75 degrees Celsius is plenty hot. I have dialed it in to that. I've used 80, which was too hot. I've gone down as low as 60. 60 will do the job. It's the safe route. You got to leave it on the heating pad much longer for it to get warm enough to do what you got to do. But 75 is right about where it needs to be. It heats up pretty quick compared, and it's not just too hot so that it damages the LCD. Now when doing this, you need a couple of tools. A nylon spudger or plastic spudger with a flat tip like this. You want to be able to work it. And then also, this is called an Isesimo or an off-brand thin but flexible metal. Really, this is what I would use to get started, to just get underneath. Once you gain access and clear a little bit of an area, then I would work the rest of it with the plastic or nylon spudger. It'll just help prevent you from cutting through flex cables or damaging it in ways that you would with metal, and it's much more difficult to do that when you're using plastic or nylon. So that's an important tip. It's getting warm, but not warm enough. I'm getting warm, so I'm gonna take off my jacket. Now, you can't just start at the top and start lifting, because all this adhesive is going to make the thing sag and flex, and even just a little bit of a curve, you're going to crack that LCD. It is super delicate. So you really do got to make sure that you're up, that the glue has released all the way around before you start lifting up. Now, if it was a broken LCD, it wouldn't be so important. You could kind of be quicker and pull up and it would crack and that'd be okay. But if I crack this LCD, it is an LCD glass combo. It's a very expensive component and I would have to pay for that. So I don't want to do that. I would lose money on the deal. So I'm going to do my very best to lift it and get it off of here without cracking it. But if I was to crack it, I would replace it on my dime. I I would tell her that it happened and let her know that she gets a 90-degree warranty on the battery and the new screen, but I would not charge for the screen. She'd still only pay for the battery. It's important to do business that way, I believe. Alright, that's feeling hot enough. I like this suction cup. It's wider than some of the others that you get with tools. These are okay for iPhones or smaller gadgets, but when it's this big of a screen, I like to use the wider suction cup, especially to gain entry. So now don't want that to re-stick. I'm twisting it just a little bit, help me to get it to come up in those areas. Alright, I believe we are free all the way around. So I want to come up and lower this bottom end where the home button is. See where it connects, kind of in the middle of the device right there. Now, I don't go straight for that. The battery connector, I believe, is somewhere in this area. So I got to take off this panel first, and it uses a Phillips head screwdriver. So you may not be able to see what I'm doing here for a second, but I'm just pulling up a few screws that I will track with my magnet. I find these perfect to help me keep track of where the screws came from and where they go. So I will take them out and put them on the magnet in a pattern that matches the pattern of me pulling them out and where they came from. Now, it's most important on iPhones because iPhones use different lengths. They have long screws and short screws, and if you take a long screw out and you put you take a short screw out, and when you reassemble you put a long screw where that short screw came from, it can dig all the way through into the logic board and damage some lines within the board, and then you've got a major problem. It may not be repairable at all, but there are a few people in this country that can repair damage so tiny it fits in the hole made by one of these super tiny screws. They can reconnect lines. Such a hard, difficult thing that not many people can do that. So it's best to avoid the need. Alright, now if I was doing a screen repair, I might only take out the first 4 screws like I've done here. And as you can see, I've lifted this up. That exposes this thing right here. Right there, that's where the battery is connected. I got to take that screw out. I could leave this just hanging here and push it back down once I have a block in there. But since we're doing a battery repair, it all needs to come out, logic board and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and continue and remove all of the screws holding that down. Putting them in order. I don't know if you can tell, the second screw on this right hand column of screws is longer than all the others. Number 2 right here. So I got to know that when I put them in. If that goes in the wrong hole, I'm in trouble. Alright, and that's out of there. So I'm going to put those things together over to the side where I won't bump into them, knock them around. And now I need to pull the screw out of here where the battery is connected, and then stick a plastic piece in between so that the connection is severed. Now I'm going to have its own magnet for the battery screw so that I know which one goes to the battery. Put it on the side as well. And then the battery the logic board can lift up, and you can put a piece of plastic underneath this section that disconnects the battery. So now there is no power going to this device. So it's safe for me to remove this plate, those 3 screws, and then disconnect the LCD. So I'm going to get another magnet, take these out and put them in a pattern like they came out. Got one long one from the back right corner. The one in the very center is shorter. The one from the back left corner is also long. So the bracket came out. We'll set it aside like that. And it's safe to disconnect these 2 little connectors. So this screen, still good, putting it aside. Now there's some things I've got to disassemble, but I'm going to go ahead and get my heating pad heating up again. Helps me to get the battery out. Some more magnets. So this plate needs to come out. This plate right here needs to come out. There's 4 screws. Or excuse me, 3 screws, not 4. I'll leave this stuck to it. I think that's the best way to do it. All right, now this will all need to be disconnected. These wires here going to the Wi-Fi, and the other antenna pull straight up. Get those out of the way. A lot of little things need to be disconnected right here. Flex cable, another flex cable. Another flex cable. Sometimes fingernails are better than tools, depending on what you're doing. Got a speaker connector here, pull straight up. And this speaker here plugs in right here. You got to pull straight up as well. Alright, it looks free up here. So now, another magnet. Take out these screws here. Unplug the speaker. This one. Adhesed down. I'm going to put this with those 4 screws to help me know how it goes back. Alright, logic board, charge port, it's all freed now. I'm going to put that aside somewhere safe. This. So now it does have pull tabs, but they never work. In my experience, iPhones, they work sometimes, but in these iPads I have yet to see one work properly. But let's see. Looky there. That's the first time I've had one work on me in this model. There we go, that one broke. Okay, looking good. Wow, that's the best luck I've had on these things so far. This is plastic. I don't want to use metal because if I puncture this battery, we're going to have a fireworks show. And it's not time for fireworks. So I'm going to try and free up the remaining adhesive. Now, this side doesn't have anything underneath it to worry about, but this side does. You see this flex cable here? It runs underneath and goes to here. I think it has something to do with the smart cover. So I don't want to tear that. I've got to be more careful on this side than I did on that side. So let's see. Rather not damage it all. I don't have to. Looks like I didn't need my heating pad for this after all. Some of the other models, the heating pad really is handy, especially if the pull tabs don't work for you. I didn't need them this time. And that's it. That's how you take the battery out of the iPad Pro 12.9. This will be disposed of in the right way. Thank you, Home Depot. Home Depot has a booth at the front where you can put in recyclable batteries. They will dispose of them the right way so that it doesn't hurt the environment, and we're all about that. So these will go into a box, and when I have enough of them, they will go to Home Depot. All right, new battery. Just like that. This has some adhesive strips in it, so I don't need to add my own. I do need to make sure that it gets put down exactly right. And this little barb, or whatever you want to call it, screw hole, will help to make sure that happens. But gotta make sure that's being exposed. Alright, I just want to inspect, make sure nothing is covered up that's not supposed to be. Alright, so now I need to make sure all my wires are out of the way so that I can put my logic board back. I'll clean that up before I close it. I'm gonna add all new adhesive, clean the old stuff out. Each time you open and close one, I don't like to reuse. I won't reuse the same adhesive. It needs to be taken out and cleaned up, and new adhesive needs to go in. If you reuse the old adhesive, there's a very good chance that the screen will end up lifting and being a problem. So I've got these screws. The longer ones are in the front, so I know that they go in those two holes. These smaller ones go in the back here. This will go in. Not sure if it's upside down or right side up, so let's figure that out real quick. Okay, so it goes like that. Can you see what I'm doing? We'll get all that in a minute. Let's go ahead and screw these in. Now you notice the charge port in this flex cable, they're soldered to the logic board. It's not a snap-on like the older designs, Lego type snap-ons. These have to be soldered, and they did that on purpose because charge ports wear out and they were easier to replace in the past, and they don't want you to replace them, so they changed the design, make it more difficult to replace so that hopefully you'll just go buy a new one and not fix it. That's how they do. So now I'm going to move around, make sure I've got everything out. Where did I see? Come on. There we go. Does that look like it's in the right spot to you? Start plugging things back in. got something underneath here. There we go. Now I'm going to disconnect the battery before I put the LCD on or anything else. Now these, they got to be directly above the connector when you press down. If you don't, there's a really thin, round, circular part that will get squished. You can crush it really easily. And then you've got a micro soldering repair. You'll have to have that part removed and a new one soldered to the board so that then you could plug it in. Major pain. You don't want to do that. Now this is called a ZIF connector. Let's move the tape and reuse it after I get this thing plugged in. You got to flip this little latch up and then stick it in and flip it back down. Once it's down, you can put the tape back. Alright, so let's inspect. See if we left anything unplugged. Everything looks really good. So now it's time to put that bar back on here. All right, so now everything is reattached except for the screen, so I still have some old adhesive that I need to pull out and then clean up with some Goo Gone to prepare the screen to go back down. This is Tessa tape. This is also what I use. Best stuff in the business. If you use this, you won't have an iPad screen come up. I've used a few others as I was learning and figuring out what the best is, and tried red tape and some 3M stuff, and always had a little bit of trouble with those. But when I made the switch to Tessa tape, T-E-S-A, I never again had another screen come up, and it's been great. It's also a little easier to clean up. Some of those other ones, when you open up an iPad and you get ready to clean it up, it just gets all gooey and soft, and you have to do a whole lot of scraping. With Tessa tape, you can often pull up big pieces like that. There's a little bit of residue, and we'll clean that up, but the whole thing doesn't turn into a blob like some of those other cheap tapes that I've seen. Now, I am using a metal tool, and in a minute I'm going to be up next to the battery, so I don't know if you've ever seen a video where a metal tool pokes a battery, but we don't want sparks or a fireworks show, so I'm going to be really careful along next to the battery. Now, there was leftover tape on a couple sides, but not on some other areas, so that means it probably came up and was stuck to the bottom side of the glass. So I'm going to have to check the screen also before I put this down and make sure I get it off of there. I don't know what it'd be like to double up on it. I don't think that's a good idea. Probably would not be as good of a seal if some areas had twice the thickness and tape and other areas didn't. So I'm just going to pull it all up from everywhere I can find it and then use brand new Tessa tape. Alright, so now all I have left is the residue. So I'm going to clean that up with Goo Gone. I've tried a few different adhesive removers, and this is by far my favorite. Goo Gone, a few squirts of this on paper towel, and you can get that stuff up there with a scraper. I want to make a couple of passes so that you know it's good and wet. You want it to soak for a second or two, and then come back to scrape. And once you know it's had a few seconds to sit with the Goo Gone on it. Alright, that's one pass. Take my second pass around. Alright. This is the scraper I use, just simple metal. Again, be careful around the battery. You definitely don't want to slip, have a tool slip and puncture. So, go slow. So that's got to get out of there. You know, those batteries, when you pull them out of an iPhone, they don't usually burst in flames on their own. But if you bend one, that's usually how it happens. It causes a crimp, and metal pokes through something it shouldn't poke through. A barrier is broken, and some components touch each other that shouldn't. Sparks begin to fly. So usually when you see a video of a battery burst into flames, it's probably the guy taking the battery out that really caused it. Every now and then it'll happen on a closed device. I've seen that happen in videos, but when it happens at a shop, it's usually just, you know, trying to replace it. And sometimes it's not avoidable. The adhesive sometimes just doesn't want to let go, and those pull tabs, like I said, they get brittle and they snap, and then you got to kind of pry up the battery to get under it with tweezers to get to the rest of the pull tab, and that's, you know, when it bends and can get end up being a fireworks show. Alright, that's pretty clean, so now I'm going to go over it with this rag again, my Goo Gone, and make sure I got it all. Being a perfectionist in this business is important when you're working with electronics that use adhesives and things like that. I've opened these up that have gone to other shops before coming to see me and have found all kinds of interesting messes. Fingerprints and glue globs and pieces of tool and stuff left inside, and it'll amaze you what you can find in here. So I like it to look pristine. When I'm done, I'm going to clean all the fingerprints and all the spots, and that's less important, but to me it is important. I think it matters when the next guy opens it and she says, yeah, I was at Mobile Device Rescue last time, and I'd prefer that they see something clean and nice and not a giant mess and thrown together. Also, be careful around this selfie cam here. If you get some Goo Gone on the lens, it will start taking foggy looking pictures. So I keep some alcohol readily available and Q-tips, and I will clean the lens before I close it. Even if I don't think I touched it, I just want to be sure. Nothing worse than closing it up, sealing it, and then finding something stupid like blurry photos on your selfie cam and having to open it up again and put yourself at risk to damage something. So it's best just to be thorough. Once you're satisfied, you've got all the goo out of there, and you need to dry up the Goo Gone. The clean paper towel. Get your fingernail down in that corner. Now that selfie cam is good and clean. Some models have sensors, like this sensor here and this sensor here. I'd go ahead and get those as well. Then, you need to blow some air through it. I use this DataVac electric duster. Very strong, very good, blows hard air. By doing that, sometimes you can reveal some leftover Goo Gone. See a little bead kind of pushed across with the air, so I can clean it up. Okay, with it all cleaned out, now it's time to take a look at the underside of the screen. I want to make sure that there's no adhesives left. Okay, good. There is on this side. So, let's get that up. Now be careful doing this. That black is paint, and you can scratch the paint off, leaving a clear spot, and you may be able to see that when it's closed. So I don't want to scratch the paint. I want to carefully pull up the adhesive. Tiny bit of residue. That's okay. So now I want to test. Now before I seal it up, actually I'm going to go ahead and put the adhesives down. They've got a backing on them, a wax paper, so that it won't stick when I'm not ready for it to. This is what I use, Tesa tape, T-E-S-A. It is the good stuff. So I'm going to put a strip along here, 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 and here, but I'm going to leave the wax backing on it until I'm ready to make it stick. Alright, so everything is connected except for the battery right here, which I'm going to leave not connected until I get the screen plugged in. Now you're not going to be able to see what I do because I have to do it with this kind of an angle, but I'm going to plug these two in carefully. You want to be lined up perfectly before you push down because they are super soft. The connectors are. They're plastic. And you can easily crush one if you're not lined up just right when you push down. So experience is helpful. In the beginning, it's easier to make that mistake, but after a while, you kind of get a feel for it. Sometimes they are stubborn, like today. Alright, so those two are plugged in. I pulled out my block that keeps the battery disconnected. I've gotten the screw that you put in for the connector. So carefully put into position and test. Now, because I have unplugged everything and plugged everything back in, I want to test everything. I want to make sure that everything is working properly before I peel off that wax paper and seal it down. Discovering something isn't working after you close it is a major problem. You don't want to do that. So this is an important step. First thing I do is I want to test for a dead spot, make sure I didn't flex it and cause a dead spot. So I drag an app over the entire screen. If it drops from my finger in the same place over and over, that'll tell us we have a dead spot, but this one didn't. I can push the home button works, double click, that is working. I'm going to check the volume. Volume down works, volume up works. So now I'm going to test the microphone and the speaker by recording myself. This is a test. I can see wavelengths, so it looks like the microphone is working, but I want to see on playback if I can hear it. This is a test. I can see wavelengths, so it looks like the microphone is working, but I want to see on playback if I can hear it. So that works. It's good. So let's delete that. Now I'm going to test the cameras. Back camera works. Let's reverse it. Selfie cam works. We look good. Let's play a little bit of music. So let's look for something like YouTube or something with sound. I prefer YouTube. There's a lot of games on here. That would work. Don't see YouTube. There we go. It's in here. Just gonna pick any old video. Oh, I'm not on the internet, so let's also test the antennas. So let's connect it to my Wi-Fi. I can find settings. See how I see a whole bunch? If the antennas weren't working, I might see none or one or two, but I see all my neighbors. It's a good, strong signal that tells me the antennas are working. But let's go ahead and connect. that's not good. That's the whole reason I put a battery in it, because it was boot looping, or it would shut down and boot up on its own like it just did here. So we may not be looking at a bad battery. We might be looking at logic board damage. And that really sucks, because that was a lot of work for that not to be the solution, but that's how you find out for sure. So, let's see what's going on. %61%, so that should not have happened. Let's see if it's related to the settings app being open. So last time, this is when it died on me when I was connecting. This time it allowed me to connect. So let's play a little bit longer, see if it happens again. Where was that YouTube app? It was just at 61. I just saw before this, I think it said, now it says 31. So with it jumping around like that, that makes me think charge IC. That's the integrated circuit that deals with charging. I can hear that just fine.
So I got some tweets about the first show. People were asking Martin because people saw Stand Up Revolution season 1 and they noticed that your hair.
22%. 61 down to 31, now at 22, really fast. I don't buy that. I don't think that's an accurate reading of what this battery holds as far as power. I think that it's jumping around. It went up to 22. This one definitely has a bad charge IC. So that is a micro soldering repair, and I'm not going to be able to cover that in this video. I do have a micro soldering tech. Looks like if the customer wants this repaired, I'll have to mail it off and have him solder a new charge IC. It just dropped from 22 to 17. Now, that may also indicate that it's not exactly the charge IC, but rather another related chip that's been nicknamed the gas gauge. It gives us our reading here. It's one or two of those, and there it goes again, just died. Let's see if it boots itself. Yep, there it goes. Okay, so now we know that has diagnosed it. This does not have a bad battery. It's got a good battery, and instead it's got a charge IC or gas gauge IC problem, or both. Could have both. That can happen in many ways, but one of the greatest causes of that is the charger. The Apple charger that comes with this device has the voltage protection built into that little box that plugs into the wall. If you use an aftermarket charger that was cheap, you got it Stop and Go or the dollar store, they don't have voltage protection built in, and people don't know that. They buy those cheap chargers and they plug them in to charge, and it's not a steady regulated stream of power like the Apple charger, nice and level. The aftermarket one will send spikes of power, and it'll fry the chips on the logic board. And I don't know that that's what's happened here, but that is the greatest cause. They still can fail on their own. A good hard drop can cause a cold solder joint underneath the charge chips, and those two areas will still touch, so they'll kind of work sometimes, but not others. Oxidation is beginning to form on the two separate sides, making that connection worse and worse until it completely fails. That's another way it can happen, or they just fail on their own. Planned obsolescence. Apple wants their gadgets to die within 3 to 5 years. That's their design. They're designed that way so that you go and buy a new one. Those problems that I just mentioned are all repairable. It can get repaired, and it would have a 90-day warranty that came with it. So we're back up at 30, and I haven't plugged it in. It went from 21 to 22, now 30. There's definitely some logic board problems on this one. So that's the end of this video. I'm going to talk with the customer about it and let her know my diagnosis. Thanks for watching.